It's been 30 years since the entertainer and TV presenter Roy Castle died from lung cancer, having lived his final moments to the fullest, creating a legacy that's still changing lives today.
And in the months before he died, Roy travelled around the UK on his tour of hope, raising more than £1 million for research into fighting the disease. Our reporter Fiona has more on his remarkable life.
And here's the man of the moment, Roy Castle.
Roy Castle, musician, entertainer and comedian. For 2 decades, he was a staple of our television screens, hosting Record Breakers. In 1986, he became the fastest person to parascend under 10 bridges on the River Thames.
And the news is that Roy's a record breaker.
We've got time for a lap of honour.
Now, we connect up the drip straight away and get the treatment started as quickly as possible.
They stick a needle in your arm, it goes into the vein, and it goes into your arm for 24
Just a few years later, he was diagnosed with lung cancer. He let the cameras in to film his treatment, the first time someone so high profile had been so open about living with cancer.
It started really when I was having a bath, because you wash your hair and rub it. And as I was rubbing the hair, when I brought my hands back down to look at them, they were just covered. They were just like ape hands, you know.
In the last months of his life, he embarked on a tour of hope, travelling around the country, raising awareness.
There's nothing worse than somebody that lies down screaming and grumbling and saying, why me? Much better to get up and start flailing your arms again, isn't it?
One of those who was with Roy on the tour right at the end was Terry. Like Roy, Terry had also never smoked, but had been diagnosed with lung cancer. He was 42. 3 decades on, Terry is still alive.
He wrote me that back, you know, saying he was going to thump his cancer the same as me.
I had so many letters from people telling me that they've had chemotherapy and what they're going through.
I always believed that as his illness progressed and went worse, he knew what a hard fight he had on. And I think he decided that if he was going to die, he would die living. He would not live dying. And I think, for me, on the tour of hope, that was like his last big show, and he put everything into it.
Roy died 2 days after his 62nd birthday, but his legacy continues in the foundation set up in his name. It provides support to patients and has helped introduce lung cancer screening.
75% of the people who were diagnosed with lung cancer were stage 4, inoperable, incurable. What we are seeing with this is diagnosing them at stage 1 or 2, 75% of the people. So it's just flipped that stat on its head, and that is truly absolutely amazing. We are saving so many lives.
And a major part of the Roy Castle Lung Cancer Foundation is the research that goes on in these labs. Over the last 25 years, they've collected over 250,000 samples from people who are healthy and people who have lung cancer. And then they're all stored in these huge freezers.
250 samples here, so 1,000, 2,000, 4,000 samples in a freezer. So what we've done so far is find a whole range of different proteins which we know can help predict someone's risk of cancer. And what we then hope to do is develop tests where we can use just a very small amount of blood and measure a small number of proteins, which together tells you whether someone is likely to get cancer in the future or whether they actually like to have cancer now.
Roll.
The Roy Castle Lung Foundation provides advice and support for patients, like Nick, who was diagnosed 6 years ago.
I coughed up 2 blood clots, about the size of £2 coins, both of them within about an hour of each other, whilst I was moving the boxes. So I knew there was something pretty serious.
Nick turned to Roy's foundation for help.
They give you hope, because the place you're at, sometimes you can't see a way out. But Roy Castle Lung Cancer Foundation, they've been there for other patients. They've been there for patients at different stages of cancer, and they've seen people survive.
A keen diver, Nick was worried he'd never dive again.
So I've had half my left lung removed, and when I came out of 6.5 hours of surgery, I was in recovery, and I asked my surgeon, would I be diving again? She told me everything had gone well. That was the first thing. I said, great, well, I'll be diving again. And she shook her head and said, you won't even remember this conversation in the morning.
And exactly 11 months later, Nick was back underwater again with the photos to prove it.
Hey, hi, how are you? What's your name?
Neil.
Neil. And are you having the same treatment as me?
30 years on, Roy Castle, his name and his legacy is stronger than ever before, funding screening and research while helping those living with lung cancer and saving many, many lives.
Oh, I'm really enjoying reminiscing, looking back at Roy Castle's life and his legacy. We're joined now by Roy's wife, Fiona Castle. Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
And also consultant respiratory physician, Dr. Emma O'Dowd. Good morning.
Morning.
What's it like watching these videos back for you?
It brings back lots of laughter for me and many happy memories. I'm so grateful that I have happy memories. So it's kept me going.
Do you know, he was one of the first... These days, we talk about people who are campaigning on issues and who are doing, I don't know, runs or paraglides or skydives. Roy was one of the first ones to do that with the tour, wasn't he?
That's right, yes. Well, he didn't do anything for his own publicity, but he felt that if he could do something that could make a difference, he got no right to stay silent. That was his attitude.
Can you tell us what that last tour was like? Because what people saw and what was happening while he was touring around the country were two very different things, I think it's fair to say.
Absolutely right. Yes, he was dying. They didn't think he would even survive the few days that we were on tour. And we were up in Glasgow one night, and there was a lovely nurse who was with me, and we stayed up all night because we didn't think he'd survive the night.
Hadn't she told
you
that
she said, it's about... She looked at her watch and said, I think it's about time we tried to get him going. And he just sat up and said, OK, where are we going? And got on with it. But there were times when he was just so poorly that he couldn't even stand. And there was another time when he was throwing up at the back of the bus because one day the train couldn't go, I think, and we had to do a bus ride for the day. And they wanted him at the front, and so I said, come on, get on with it. And he just got up.
Oh, you were the sympathetic type then?
Not very.
But the result of all of that was, Fiona, that the impact of that period of time, but also he'd built up over years and years. People trusted him, didn't they?
Yeah.
When he was doing the stunts, they trusted him. So when he started talking about his illness, it had double the impact, didn't it?
That's right. There was a huge amount of publicity, and it was all very favourable towards him. It wasn't nasty or...
And was it comfortable? Because you were effectively, during that period of time, as you just told us, you were probably grieving for what was going to happen yourself, personally. Yeah. So it's a very big thing for the individual, but also for loved ones, because you know what's happening.
I knew what was happening, but I also wanted Roy to sort of feel good about what he was doing and to try and make the most of the opportunity he had. So I don't think I actually thought about myself. I just thought, come on, get on with it.
Do you know, Emma, you know full well, you won't remember some of what Roy did in his early career, obviously, but you know full well about some of the impact that it's had over the years.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that legacy has continued, so it's been 30 years and still there's now the foundation that we've just seen the video of in his memory, and that does such an amazing amount of good work. So they fund research, which is what I've been lucky enough to receive, but also they support patients and carers, and that's just a phenomenal legacy to have, and it's down to that kind of selflessness that Roy had in those final days and weeks, really.
I think one of the things that's always really interesting is he was a trumpeter. Brilliant trumpeter, a musician, and very active. He didn't smoke. So it was from the passive smoking, when he performed in concert halls and theatres, that they believe triggered his lung cancer or caused his lung cancer. And it was an awareness of that that made a massive difference as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think, you know, and Fiona has been a real sort of fighter for that ban of smoking in public places that finally came through kind of 12 years or so after Roy died. But I think that was that kind of catalyst to try and start that. And I think now, if someone sat next to you in a restaurant, you would think it was very strange, but you forget that
it's illegal.
That going back, you know, that was completely normal. So actually, I think it's a real change that for the better.
What did it feel like when you saw that law come into force?
Oh, it was so exciting. We were thrilled to bits because it was so important. Not just because of what had happened to Roy, but just because we wanted to make people aware of the danger of smoking. And I think we still have to continue with that today, with the vaping and so on that's going on. We don't know the long-term dangers of that yet. And so we just have to try and tell people, don't even take it up. And it's hard with the children, with the vapes as well.
Fiona, when Roy was working in clubs, and we were talking about a moment ago, smoky clubs as they were then, did you used to travel with him? Did you go to venues? Did you experience it yourself?
I did some of the time because, but when I had a family, obviously I was at home with the children. But I tell you what I used to do. I used to make him go for a walk around the garden and hang his clothes up outside under the patio for 3 days before the smell would go. I couldn't put his clothes back into the wardrobe.
So he'd come back from a gig or whatever.
Absolutely stinking, yes.
And he'd be sort of banished to the garden.
He could go and have a walk around the garden.
Tell us a bit more about the practical help. So is in your hospital, for example, how do people access some of the work that the organisation does?
So whenever someone's diagnosed or we think they might have a lung cancer, actually there is a booklet that Roy Castle have produced, or a series of booklets about different aspects of lung cancer. And so we tend to give them a paper copy because that's easier, but you can also get that on the website. And there is also a helpline and a support line that people can phone.
Is practical information? What sort of thing is it?
It's information right from what to expect about a test through to different treatments and what you can expect. And it's written in a really great, really easy to understand way. So if people are confused, I would recommend that you go to the website or just ask your hospital, because most hospitals have got copies of all of those leaflets that they can give out to people. Do
you remember, Fiona, I don't know, when Roy was diagnosed, do you remember not thinking that there wasn't much out there for you? You're a bit on your own. I mean, obviously, you handled it in your own way. But was there a lack of information at that time?
There was no information at all. Only what he was going to have in the way of treatment. But from my point of view, I just had to learn it online.
And I mean, even now, that's a frightening time for people, isn't it?
It is, yes. Horrendous. I mean, it's almost grieving in itself, because you don't know what's going to happen and what sort of success you'll have in treatment.
Do you think, you know, we were talking about the ban in restaurants or pubs, you know, smoking. There are proposals now. We've heard the previous Conservative government to effectively stop people being able to buy cigarettes in the future, and then a suggestion of banning smoking in outdoor spaces. Am I wrong to assume you would support all of these?
I haven't done anything in a practical way about it, but I've thought it's very important, not just to say you must not, but just to say, look, it's stupid to smoke, don't take it up. Get rid of it, because it's not going to do you any good. And actually just encourage people not to start smoking.
Emma, and of course, you know, so much more is known now about lung cancer, but in an ideal world, you know, if you had all the funding in the world, as well as obviously eliminating it, what would be the next kind of key step in terms of that step towards elimination for you?
So I think one of the things we've got is screening, and that's obviously not eliminating it. I think eliminating is about, you know, preventing all of the things we know that can cause lung cancer.
So environment is environment.
So, yeah, I mean, air pollution, we think can cause lung cancer in some cases. So it's about looking at how we can make our air as clean as possible. It's about stopping smoking. And if we're looking at elimination, we're not just talking about here, we're talking about worldwide. And I think there's a lot of pressure in lots of other countries from the tobacco industry still to try and get young people to start smoking. So I think it needs to be a kind of global push, really, to try and do all the things that we can possibly do. Whether we can eliminate it completely, I don't know, but we can make a best chance we possibly can of getting rid of lung cancer.
Fiona, when Roy was doing his stunts back in the day, what was the one that worried you most?
He had to wing walk from Gatwick to Le Bourget, and he couldn't use the little microphone because it wasn't working. And I thought, oh, he's going to die.
Why are you laughing when you say that?
No, hold on, because that was like 3.5 hours, wasn't it?
Yeah, he had the record, yeah.
Yes. But he said that for him, and also going under all the bridges of the Thames.
I think we saw that one with the parachute.
Yes.
Yeah, parasailing.
I thought they wouldn't slow the boat down enough and he'd get decapitated.
Were you laughing at the time?
No.
It's always a joy talking to you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
For
Thank you for
inviting
coming
us.
in and talking to us.
It's
It really
joy.
is a joy. You've got a lovely aura about you. Brought some peace and joy to the sofa. Fiona Castle, thank you. Dr. Emma O'Dowd, good luck with the work you're doing and the research. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.